Hello and welcome to American Friction, the best and only US politics podcast and the podcast that saved podcasting. I'm Jacob Jarvis and there is no Chris today, but there is of course the wonderful, the one and only Nikki McCann Ramirez. Hi Nikki.
It's me. Hello.
She's here. Well, on this show, we're going to be looking at Trump sending troops across the US. It's all going into overdrive. Plus, we'll talk about the shutdown and much more. Welcome back. I'm saying it this week, which feels a bit strange. Welcome back. You're listening to American Friction. Right, before we begin, a quick appeal. We need your support to keep going. And as you'll see if you're watching the video of this on Spotify, I'm at home this week, and that's because I've been sick. And because I'm sick, you've got to be really nice to me. So what that means is you should back us on Patreon to help us keep going and to keep me in medicine.
If we don't get 50 new subscribers, we're going to have to euthanize Chris.
And me secondarily as well. It's going to be a bad look. That's where Chris is now, actually waiting for it to see what goes on. But yeah, from £3 a month, you can save our lives and you'll get the show ad-free, and other tiers get you access to bonus content and merchandise. And if you can't back us financially, we totally get that. But please do go rate, review, subscribe wherever you're listening to the show. But if you do want to back us on Patreon, go to patreon.com/American Friction. There is a link in the show notes. Nikki, what's the Insurrection Act and why is Trump just banging on about it so much?
Yeah, so the Insurrection Act is essentially the law that allows the President of the United States to federalize the National Guard. We've talked about it in past episodes. We did some explanations on the National Guard. Those are all the modern equivalent of like state and local militias that existed when the colonies were a thing. Before the United States became a unified territory, every state, every colony had kind of its own militia that could be called up to serve in the event of a conflict. When it became a formalized nation, it was like, okay, we have the standing army of the United States, and then like individual states can have not a fighting force because it's not intended to be deployed domestically. It's basically like a militia that can assist with things in the event of a crisis or an emergency. Like we've talked about before, it's usually natural disasters that the National Guard is deployed within a state. The Insurrection Act allows the president to federalize the National Guard in the event of an insurrection or a revolt or like a civil war. To put it simply, it's basically taking the National Guard out of state control and putting it under federal control. The circumstances in which the president is supposed to be allowed to do this are really limited because the president already is commander-in-chief of the U.S. Army. They already have these forces. And there's another law, Posse Comitatus, which says that active military members of the military are not supposed to do civilian law enforcement. Like, it's unconstitutional, theoretically, for a U.S. soldier who's just walking around to arrest you because they caught you shoplifting. That's why you have local police precincts, local police officers that are supposed to do civilian law enforcement. And the Trump administration has been providing sort of like weird interpretations of the Insurrection Act in order to do these troop deployments, these National Guard deployments into major Democratic cities. We talked about it when they did it in LA. We talked about it when they did it in Washington, D.C. Washington, D.C. was a little different because D.C. is not really its own state. But over the course of the last week, the Trump administration planned to deploy National Guard troops to Portland. And Oregon sued. And a judge determined that the situation in Oregon, where really nothing was going on, there was really nothing happening in Portland, did not constitute an insurrection, a breakdown in social order, a riot, or the type of scenario that would necessitate the president federalizing the National Guard and deploying troops to an American city where law enforcement already has a presence, like local law enforcement, which is entitled to have that jurisdiction, has a presence. Over the past couple months, Trump and Stephen Miller, who's kind of been the architect of all these policies, are looking to push the boundaries of what the president's enumerated powers in the Constitution allow him to do. And one of the ways they're really testing it is through these deployments of troops to major American cities over the objection of local and state elected officials who are theoretically the people who are supposed to have the like first line of jurisdiction over the deployment of the National Guard in their own state, but also a lot of times over the objection of local law enforcement who are saying, we can handle the 20 people who are protesting here. Bringing in the National Guard actually makes the situation more volatile and more dangerous and puts us at more risk. And it really, again, as we've talked about before, it's not about law and order. It's not about making cities safe again. It's an authoritarian show of force to demonstrate not only to like democratic cities and democratic lawmakers, but also to Republicans who voted for Trump that, oh, I can punish the people you don't like. I can take away control from these constituencies who I've told you are bad. And I can take away these people's civil and constitutional rights, and there's nothing you can do about it. And that's sort of the point of tension that we've been dealing with the past couple months. And this Oregon decision was really critical.
With him keep threatening on the Insurrection Act, I mean, what is it that's making him not just go wholeheartedly all the way in with it? Because we know that he clearly wants to be able to use more troops. He spoke about using troops beyond National Guard troops, which it sounds like the Insurrection Act would allow him to do. So why is he kind of stalling on that, particularly when it seems like the blocks to it would be the courts, but as we've discussed, the Supreme Court just does whatever the fuck he wants anyway. So eventually, you know, he would get his way. So what's making him not just go sort of hell for leather?
I mean, because historically, the invocation of the Insurrection Act it carries a ton of weight. It's a well-known law, not just like amongst political scholars. It's well-known and well understood in Congress. It's one of those things that if you invoke the Insurrection Act and say, I am federalizing the National Guard, I am doing XYZ, there better be a fucking reason. And as much as the Trump administration wants to claim that these democratic cities where they're sending National Guard troops, where they're doing all these ICE raids are, you know, hellholes of crime and debauchery that can only be cleaned up through the use of force and the use of military deployments, the facts on the ground don't necessarily align, and they don't go away because it's inconvenient for the Trump administration. So one of the first things you're seeing is courts say, no, you actually don't have the authority to do this. But the moment you invoke the Insurrection Act and not only federalize the National Guard, but grant the military the power to start arresting and enforcing local laws and ordinances, that is a breakdown of the rule of law that is very hard to recover from, especially if you're doing it in a time period where it's not necessitated. The last time the Insurrection Act was actually invoked was under George H.W. Bush during the Rodney King riots, where Los Angeles really was in a state of turmoil that local law enforcement could not handle. It was the riots in response to the acquittal of 3 police officers, I think it was 3 police officers, who were caught on camera beating the living daylights out of a black man, Rodney King. I'm sure our listeners will be aware of that. Before that, a prison riot in Atlanta in 1987 under Ronald Reagan. Really, the majority of the instances that I'm seeing here are related to riot suppression. And the last time it was actually invoked was under George H.W. Bush in the 90s. So it's been more than 3 decades since it was formally invoked. The closest we've actually come, and it wouldn't have happened because Trump was president at the time, was probably January 6th. Like January 6th, and then the George Floyd protests in 2020, there were also talks about federalizing the National Guard, invoking the Insurrection Act. We've reported on it at Rolling Stone about how that is one of the things that Trump says he wishes he would have done in the summer of 2020 was crack down harder on the George Floyd protests. And this time around, he doesn't have a riot, but he still wants to use that power. And he has enablers like Stephen Miller who are helping him make it happen.
Is the risk here that once he gets an excuse to go through with it, there's nothing stopping him reversing it, basically? Is that, you know, is it essentially, can it be almost a permanent state of permission once he grants that to himself?
I mean, in some instances, yeah. If this administration would definitely try. I was actually in DC last weekend, and there are still a ton of National Guard just all over the city in the stupidest places. Like, I don't know, standing in front of the DuPont Circle fountain, which is one of the wealthiest neighborhoods in Washington, D.C. Like, what are you protecting? The pigeons? But it just feels like the National Guard are becoming a bit of a permanent presence in Washington, D.C. We know they're still wandering around other cities where they have been deployed and just kind of doing menial labor that law enforcement really shouldn't be doing. But I could see the administration making a play to sort of have permanent militarized presences in these major Democratic cities. And, you know, again, if you invoke this act without a clear and specific purpose toward a really targeted application, you're essentially allowing the president, the executive branch, to operate a standing army in any state that they want. And that's not something the president should be able to do.
I've seen there's this sort of state-on-state violence we're seeing a little bit in governors falling out, but troops from Texas basically been sent elsewhere. What's going on with that, and why is that becoming the case? That
is insane. That is actually insane. I've seen people who are smarter than me straight up describe that as like a Civil War style invasion.
Yeah.
Because, so it's not uncommon for members of the National Guard to be deployed to another state. Again, usually in the event of a natural disaster, usually with the request and consent of the governor of the state receiving those members of the National Guard. So like, for example, if there's flooding in Texas, the National Guards of Louisiana and Oklahoma and like New Mexico, surrounding states, might be activated and send forces to help out with recovery efforts. That's extremely common. What is not common is for the governor of one state to say, ooh, I don't like what you're doing. I'm giving the president members of the National Guard from my state to go to your state to fuck your shit up over your objections. That, and again, there was a really interesting moment. Stephen Miller was on CNN, I believe, earlier this week, and he was talking about how, you know, the excuse they've been using as to why these National Guard troops need to be deployed, the primary one has been to restore order and combat crime, and then to protect members of ICE and other members of law enforcement while they're executing immigration policy. And Stephen Miller was on CNN, and he was going off about how, you know, crazy radicals are shooting at ICE facilities and trying to kill ICE agents, referencing the shooting that took place in Texas last month. Yeah. And the anchor on CNN just goes, yeah, but you're not deploying the National Guard to Texas.
And the reminder that they didn't shoot ICE agents, they shot ICE detainees, which just seems to be...
Yeah, they killed ICE detainees.
Yeah, completely forgotten.
But that's the thing. It's, you know, you're seeing... I don't think at this point you can deny that there is violence and aggression against members of ICE. I think the way the administration is presenting the statistics about that is misleading, but obviously we've had incidents of violence against ICE agents. Where those incidents are taking place does not necessarily correlate to where the administration is deploying members of the Guard. Crime rates in this country do not necessarily correlate to the states where Trump and the administration are deploying the National Guard. If it was really about like crime and anti-ICE violence, you'd be seeing some of these red states get invaded. But what we're seeing is an ideological alliance between Trump and people like Texas Governor Greg Abbott, where if you cooperate and play nice with the administration and boost their ideological project, you get exempted, and you not only get to like get a get out of jail free card from all the authoritarianism, but you get to participate in the subjugation of other citizens. You, as Governor Greg Abbott, get to participate in the undermining of your authority as governor, because that's something that we're not talking about enough, is that Abbott doing this to Pritzker in Illinois also undermines a critical power and protection that Abbott is currently benefiting from, which is the idea that the governor of another state cannot invade you.
Yeah.
So what if Gavin Newsom decides to send the California National Guard to Texas? What up?
I mean, is this not just the whole kind of fallacy of the MAGA mindset, I suppose, that they make up bullshit problems, which then cause real problems, which they then try and solve in a bullshit way. and it just creates a sort of doom loop. Because what I'm seeing here is it seems that they've said that they're going to send in troops because people are protesting about heavy-handed law enforcement, which then people protest against worse, which then justifies what they did in a weird way eventually. But that's their whole MO, right?
No,
is
100%.
that they want to cause this shit to prove that they can do horrible shit, basically.
And I maintain that state-sponsored violence is political violence. Dragging kids and old people out of their apartment building at 3 a.m, throwing them into vans, like arresting, crying, screaming children like they did at that apartment complex in Chicago. That is a form of political violence.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's just, as well, it's so clear that Trump is saying he's sending troops in to quell violence, but he clearly doesn't want it to be quelled, does he? Like, politically, he requires this unrest to keep going, to keep him in the position he's in. It's like, I was looking at some polling around it, and you can see how basically, obviously, Democrats totally are against the deployment of National Guard in states. Republicans, much more for it. Independents pretty much oppose it as well. The thing being that this is just an exercise to get his base excited, right? Like, he wants the situations to get worse. He wants there to be images of violence on the streets, as far as I can see anyway.
No, 100%. That, again, like I mentioned, he really regrets not cracking down on the 2020 George Floyd protests. Mm-hmm. And you can kind of tell he's itching to have a riot in one of these cities so he can come in full force. When they conducted that arrest in Chicago, they had Black Hawk helicopters participating in these arrests of like a building full of just like families, children, old people. It turns out they accidentally arrested a bunch of US citizens, but you can really see, especially with the aesthetics of ICE, of DHS, the like full, like, why the fuck do you have people in full camouflage running around Chicago? Like, this isn't Kabul. Like,
yeah. I mean, they're simply just not camouflaged when they're in Chicago wearing full camouflage.
No, 100%. But also the face coverings, the guns, the amount of effort they put into, like, getting the National Guard authorized to carry rifles in D.C. It's very clear that they want the clash. They want the confrontation. And I think that's why some of the counter protests that have been taking place in Portland are so interesting to me. I don't know if you've seen the videos online, but it's literally people in just like giant inflatable costumes dressed like unicorns and frogs and other things, just like dancing in front of ICE agents. And like, yeah, you can't beat the shit out of a man in an inflatable unicorn costume without looking like the insane person. There was an incident in Chicago this week where ICE agents shot a priest.
Fuck
like
me,
a priest
man.
in like the collar and everything with a pepper ball in the head. As he was saying, like, come to church, come pray with me. And you can't do that kind of thing without looking like an authoritarian jackass. You just can't.
Are we one of them weird, unfortunate, I ask this sort of question all the time, Nikki, where it's always sliding doors moments, but are we at a kind of a sliding doors moment where this is either going to end up being a massive waste of everyone's time? We're going to see more images like what we saw in Washington, D.C. of just National Guard having to like kind of sleep on benches and whatever and just chill on the street and it's just fucking pointless. Or, as you say, it erupts and before you know it, this is the firm step towards a complete military state. It does feel to me that it's on a bit of a knife edge.
I feel like that step has already been taken. We talked about it in our episode about Pete Hegseth's speech at Quantico, where what you're dealing with is people who are obsessed with the warrior culture without a war. And there's this really good book by a researcher, Kathleen Bellow, called Bring the War Home. Highly recommend everyone read it. About how, like, to boil it down, after the like war on terror, where you had so much of the U.S. defense economy built around making insane technology for the military, when those wars stopped being like the primary focus of the military, they started selling all that tech and all that equipment and material and training to U.S. police forces.
Yeah.
And so now these warriors, these Pete Hegseth types, these Trump, these Stephen Miller types have this mindset that they as Americans are supposed to be like a Spartan war fighting culture. all the equipment and technology at their disposal and no external enemy to direct that toward. So they're directing it internally. And I think we've already taken that step. And there's some funny bits to it. There's moments like, I don't know if you saw the photo of members of the Texas National Guard showing up in Illinois, and they were all just like these kind of overweight dudes who didn't really fit into their uniform.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was very, for that to be the image after the Pete Hegseth no fatty speech was really something. But the core of it is that what you're seeing now is the Trump administration, is the state turn against its own population. And right now it's divided. They're very intentionally only targeting Democrats. And people talk about it, and it's kind of an overwrought point, but you used to have an entire culture of Republicans who claimed that they needed guns and they needed ammo and they needed all these things because one day the U.S. government was going to overreach and try and take their rights away and try and come to their community and take away their representation and override their vote. That's happening. And Republicans are cheering it. And I don't see how you do the 180 and turn around from that. I don't.
No, it feels so weird that as America obviously gets more isolationist, then there's clearly, to have the narratives that MAGA wants to have, then you have to have somewhere for violence and anger to go. And the only place for that is within your own borders. If you're going to, if Trump's going to end wars every single day, like he apparently is, then that's the only way to, he's on like 9 wars ended now or some shit.
9 wars, 10 wars.
Yeah.
No wars.
Who knows how many. All of this is happening, Nikki, whilst the shutdown is still going on.
Yeah.
What's the kind of latest with that?
We're at a stalemate, buddy.
Yeah, just that's it.
The shutdown has entered its second week.
Mm-hmm.
There seems to be very little progress. Trump is refusing to negotiate.
No.
Democrats are kind of in this mindset that we want stated guarantees passed and signed into law before we, commit to anything. There's been a couple votes. The votes have failed. And I think Democrats are kind of gaining steam on the messaging. It's very clear at this point that the central takeaway that people are getting about why this shutdown is happening is the ACA healthcare subsidies. If people want a longer explanation on that, listen to last week's episode. I maintain my initial prediction, which is I don't think Democrats are going to be able to get a concession rolling back the Medicaid cuts in the reconciliation package that passed over the summer. I do think they can get an on-paper extension of the ACA subsidies. And I think that would be a win. It would look very good for Democrats. They just need to really hold the line right now because, again, the Medicaid cuts were super unpopular. Trump's faltering on his economic messaging, and it really can't be overstated how devastating it's going to be for everyday Americans who are already dealing with higher prices, inflation, economic stagnation. Every other day, it seems like some economic indicator is at its worst it's been since the 2009 financial crisis, which can't be good. So for Republicans, letting these subsidies expire and having premiums, healthcare premiums shoot up at the end of the year, not just the end of the year, but going into 2026, which is a midterm year, I don't think they want that. And I hope that someone in the Republican Party is like, hey, why don't we just kick and stamp our feet for a few more days and then just agree to this?
Well, at least we've got Chuck Schumer in charge of stuff on the Dem side, and we know that guy is like a fucking rock. So I'm sure it's all gonna work out really well.
Spine of steel.
Now, going on to some other stories. So a big one here, Nikki, which I'm sure most of our listeners will have seen some reporting around, but Trump claims to have agreed this Gaza deal and got this sort of happening over a ceasefire there. How is this being reacted to in the United States?
Quite positively, I think. I mean, generally, I think there's a lot of bipartisan agreement that this war needs to end and we needed a ceasefire ages ago, more than a year ago. I think people are cautiously optimistic. It feels like we've been in this position before where it felt like we'd gotten to a ceasefire agreement, that there was going to be the transfer of like some there's been hostage and prisoner swaps over the course of the last 2 years. There's been moments where it's like, okay, has it finally ended? And then, you know, Israel resumes its bombing campaign, something happens, and the conflict reignites. So cautious optimism is, I think, what everyone is feeling. You know, I know this is a 20-point plan, and the points are largely dictated by Trump, and everyone's making concessions to everything. I would love to see in these early phases the ability for human rights and relief groups to actually get into Gaza and start helping the people who are still trapped there. Regardless of where you're at on this issue, everyone wants this to end. Everyone agrees it needs to end. And I don't know. I'll give Trump some credit for helping with the negotiations. I think, as he does with most wars, he's going to take an undue amount of credit over what he deserves. But, you know, if it ends the war, I'm all for it.
It does feel to me, looking from afar, that in the US, Trump is making this all very much about himself. Is this kind of...
As he does with everything, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, we're recording on the eve of when Nobel Peace Prize nominations come out. So obviously he's been gunning hard for that. So is that the sort of right-wing narrative in the US?
Oh, 100%. But also, I don't see how you can ask for a Nobel Peace Prize for ending a war that you were funding.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think there's also just this kind of what I struggle with Trump here is how he wants to take so much credit for getting this done. Surely that must come alongside plenty of criticism for how long it's taken him to get it done as well.
Oh, 100%. And I also think the Qataris were also really instrumental in, I think, negotiating the ceasefire. Also, I think there was definitely some pressure on Israel from other regional powers, because if people recall, last month, Israel conducted airstrikes against Qatar, like unilateral airstrikes, which is an act of war. So I think there was also increased pressure from other regional allies being like, hey, you've been bombing everyone in the region under the guise of going after Hamas. You've been acting as basically a rogue state. Like, pump the brakes.
Yeah, it's kind of, I guess it's fair play, Trump, but come on, let's not
measured
give him too
credit.
much.
We give measured credit.
Yeah, exactly. Limited fair play to him. Right, let's talk about Pam Bondi. So, Attorney General Pam Bondi, this Senate hearing. This seemed like it was just the worst of these hearings, of just when it's just someone just going in and just refusing to answer anything and just being a complete arsehole. Is that read on it fairly right? Like, it just
100%.
looks very unconstructive.
Yeah, and there was a funny little anecdote. These people, their information security is fucking ass. All of them keep getting sniped. Like, you know, reading text messages in giant font on their phone. Trump keeps just like waving around his notes at meetings. Kash Patel also in his own hearing in the Oversight Committee had just like really large bolded notes that everyone could photograph. But Pam Bondi, in the binder she brought to the hearing, had just like a list of insults written on the margins, where it was very clear she came into this hearing not really interested in engaging in, you know, the oversight principle of the committee and the dialogue that members of the executive branch are supposed to have with the legislative branch. She came in ready to fight. And again, we've talked about how this is a made-for-TV administration. She was there to do owns and do dunks. And I think members of Congress, particularly Republican members of Congress, who most of the time I find incapable of introspection. I find both parties incapable of introspection. But one of the things that's been really frustrating about the past 9 months is how obvious it is that the Trump administration, the White House, the cabinet has deep contempt for Congress. how they are actively working to strip Congress of its legislative powers, of its oversight powers, of the main point of the House of Representatives and like Congress in general, which is the ability to set budgets and legislate within the United States. The executive keeps trying to rip those powers away from Congress and then shows up at hearings and is like, ha ha ha, fuck you, I do what I want. And Republicans are just like, yeah, this is great. This is so cool. I think that to me was what stuck out the most in this hearing was just the level of contempt that Pam Bondi had for the lawmakers in that room. And it's reflected in the way so many other people in Trump's orbit engage with Congress, engage with other lawmakers. They have completely abandoned the principle of representative government. We don't have a king. The United States elects a president, but the majority of political power in the United States is supposed to be vested in your local and state government officials. That's why we have three branches. That's why we have the separations of powers. That's why we have state legislatures and city councils and the House and the Senate. You're supposed to have these layers of representation and diluted political power that ensure that the president doesn't behave like a monarch. And you just have, I don't know, again, I feel like I'm watching someone just like take a hammer to a sculpture.
Yeah, I'm finding it increasingly weird how you can see the Republicans involved who are like going along with it because they're so desperate to cling on to their positions, which they feel like they won't if they go up against Trump. But then at the same time, I'm struggling to see, other than financially, what the benefits are of keeping power, because they're also just letting themselves be stripped of any power whatsoever. Like it's a really weird sort of double-edged sword they seem to be playing there. I mean, were there any key moments from Bondi that really stood out as illustrative or useful, or did anything come out that was worth interrogating particularly?
Yeah, there was a couple moments. One of the big ones was Dick Durbin asks Pam Bondi if she had coordinated with the White House about the release of the Epstein files. And she just straight up goes, I'm not talking to you about that. And then just launches into a string of insults, which there was also another moment where she was directly asked, I think by Sheldon Whitehouse, if in the Epstein files, there were incriminating photos of Trump with young women. And she also did not answer, did not even acknowledge the question, just launched into another string of insults. It was just a really heated moment. She kind of spent the entire hearing calling senators old, useless bitches. Again, it's not productive, but the Oversight Committee is supposed to be one of the most powerful committees in the Senate.
Yeah.
It has an extreme amount of power when compared to other congressional committees. And for it to just become this clown show is really depressing, because it really shows how one of the biggest tools the American people have for accountability toward the executive branch has just been neutered over the last decade. And it was really depressing to watch.
Democrats have, as you mentioned, have been pushing on Epstein and the Epstein files. I know that we've wanted them to go hard on it, but politically is it also starting to kind of give diminishing returns? Because it does just seem like I don't want them to stop pushing on it, but at the same time, it seems like they're just constantly pushing against a closed door.
I mean, I don't think so.
No,
I think gains have been made. I think the premise is a little wonky because every news story has diminishing returns. Like every news story starts with a frenzy. You get a lot of wall-to-wall coverage and then it tapers off. But I think the fact that, think about the other major sort of news cycles we've had in this administration. Off the top of my head, the two stories that stand out to me as things that had a lot of stay in the news cycle and were bad for the administration and required the administration to constantly be justifying and defending themselves were the Kilmar Abrego Garcia story and then Epstein. Those have been two things. I think those are two stories where the administration was very clearly on the back foot. They are responding illogically and insanely to two issues that the population as a whole are very decided on. I think it's very bipartisan. We're seeing more and more bipartisan agreement that the Trump administration's approach to immigration enforcement is authoritarian and bad and that people disagree with it. We also know that there's pretty bipartisan agreement that there should be more transparency around the Epstein files. And Republicans sort of digging their feet in and being like, no, we're not doing this. It's a hoax. It's a lie. It's an Obama conspiracy theory. People don't believe it. And yeah, maybe you're only in the news every couple weeks over it, but it's still consistent. It's still getting Democrats in front of cameras. It's still motivating news. And it's still, especially the Epstein story, sowing distrust between Trump and the MAGA movement and some of its most like prominent supporters in the 2024 cycle. I think one of the questions you had on our script today was about these podcasters who had Trump on. Yeah, the Manosphere podcasters, which we're trying to set up an episode on the Manosphere for you lovely listeners. But people like Theo Vaughn, like Joe Rogan, like Andrew Schultz, who were very pro-Trump in the 2024 election cycle, like Aiden Ross, who had him on their streams and podcasts and, you know, really hyped up the transformation Trump was going to do to the country. And in some cases, hyped up transparency around the Epstein files, not only with Trump, but with other members of his current administration. They're now really souring on the president. They're saying that they regret getting involved in the race, that this is not the kind of thing they voted for, which, what did you think you were fucking voting for? Okay. But now we see these really prominent content creators and media figures distancing themselves from the president and from the administration because, like in Theo Vaughn's case, he's the son of a Nicaraguan immigrant. And he's like, I don't like what's happening here. I don't like how this is being carried out. And I also think that reflects some hesitancy and some sort of like, oh, that you'll probably find amongst, I think, probably independent and sort of undecided voters from 2020, but increasingly maybe people who outright call themselves Republicans.
I think with Theo Von, just something that we all have to remember too with that dude is he's 45. Like, these fucking guys keep getting treated like because they're online, they just get treated like they're children. Like, no. You should have thought about what having J.D. Vance and Trump and whoever else on your podcasts meant.
Yeah.
Because you're not children. Like, all of these guys are like 40.
Either you're stupid or you're lying.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Or kind of both. Who fucking knows?
Yeah.
On another note on Trump interviews, he's doing them by text now, I see. So he was texting Jake Tapper.
I'm sorry.
But we don't know if it was actually him texting. We apparently, as far as I can see, Trump doesn't like texting. He doesn't like text-based communication. But yeah, and Jake Tapper didn't really give any justification as to how he knew these were definitely from Trump. Yeah, what's going on here?
Okay, first of all, I read the text, or like read the recounting of the text. I watched the clips. Chat GPT ass answers.
Yeah.
Here's the thing. This is a man who loves to yap. I am a yapper. I am a certified yapperina. I know a yapper when I see a yapper, and Donald Trump likes to fucking yap. He loves to get on the phone with any news network and just talk. He loves it. He does it with Fox News. He does it with Newsmax. He loves to write gigantic things to post on Truth Social. My first thought was actually the auto pen controversy. This idea that like Joe Biden was using auto pen to sign drugs. Imagine if Joe Biden had started taking interviews via text message and there was just like no way to confirm that a journalist was actually talking to him. It would have been fucking Armageddon.
Yeah, like the rumor mill would have been straight away like that dude's dead or that dude can't speak anymore. Like, yeah, it's fucking crazy.
Yeah, and also just I do kind of believe it was him because the one sentence weirdo answers he was giving Jake Tapper were very Trumpian. But again, it was the kind of answer that if I told an AI answer this like Trump would, I probably would have gotten that. But yeah, and I think once again, this just all in the context of the health stuff. And there was another clip that circulated this week of his face going kind of droopy at an event.
You're right.
I'm sus about how the president's doing. I'm sus.
I don't think that dude is all that healthy. I'm going to put it out there. But you know.
Maha.
Well, I think he seems kind of good for his age. He's just old as hell.
For his age.
But yeah,
For his age.
but like just for his age, shouldn't be doing the biggest job on the planet. That's
100%.
just
Totally.
that's my hot take. I don't think he seems in terrible shape for how old he is.
Yeah.
But like, that's not a compliment when you're talking about the president of the United States.
No, yeah, it's like we said with the escalator thing. If a fall on a stationary escalator, an escalator that stops, represents a threat to the longevity and safety and continuity of leadership of the Republic, that's a problem.
So just onto a listener question now before we go on to the silly question of the week. David Bunce, who is one of our Patreon supporters, thank you very much, David. If you want to be like him, go to patreon.com/American Friction. There's a link in the show notes. So David Bunce asks, what on earth is going on with Adelita Grijalva? So we spoke about this previously, didn't we? About the sort of...
We did.
How Mike Johnson is stalling on swearing her in because... basically she'll vote on Epstein stuff that they don't want. Is that just a stalemate at the moment? What's happening there?
I mean, yeah, she still, as of Thursday, October 9th, has not been sworn in. And what we know is that the moment Mike Johnson calls the House back into session, he would have to swear her in. She'll sign the discharge petition. The discharge petition to hold a vote on the release of the Epstein files will begin moving forward. This has now become, again, when we were just talking about whether the Epstein story has diminishing returns, this is an Epstein story.
Yeah.
I interviewed her last week. The interview's on rollingstone.com. People should go read it. But she straight up said she can't think of any other reason why she hasn't been sworn in. It's really clear at this point that this story has become, next to the shutdown, sort of the secondary story that's fueling the news in Congress right now. Senators are now calling on Johnson to swear her in. And it's, a little rare for members of the Senate to be like, hey, do your fucking job to the House Speaker.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think Adelita Grijalva deserves to be sworn in, but even more so, her constituents who haven't had a member of Congress since the spring deserve to have a member of Congress sworn in and voting on this shutdown, representing them in these healthcare negotiations. It's not only Mike Johnson denying Grijalva her rightful seat in the House of Representatives, it is him denying her constituents their right to representation in Congress.
So, right, silly question time now then. This isn't actually that silly a question. It's a tough question I'm going to go for. So... I've been ill, so I've been watching quite a lot of movies. I had a howler of a day of films the other day. But, there's all them red carpet videos. Letterboxd goes up to people and just says, your top 4 movies. Yeah. So let's do that. Let's act like we're celebs and do our Letterboxd top 4. Simon, we're going to come to you on this as well.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know.
My top 4 movies.
It's rough. Top 4... Letterboxd, what are they? What are the best movies in your opinion? Nikki, you're going first. Top 4.
Okay, my favorite movie of all time is Full Metal Jacket. I love it.
Yeah, that rips pretty well.
Yeah, I think after that, I would probably say Titanic. I think Titanic is a great fucking film. That is my comfort movie when I am sick or when I can make the argument for why it's one of the greatest movies of all times. I think the switch an hour and a half in from romance to disaster movie is phenomenally executed. I love it. Third, I would probably put Grave of the Fireflies.
I've not seen that.
A lot of sad movies. All my picks are really fucking sad. Yeah. Because then my fourth pick is Dear Zachary, which I think is one of the best independent documentaries ever made. But also, I cannot watch it without sobbing like a baby and feeling like shit for 3 days after. Which goes the same for Grave of the Fireflies. I can't watch it without wanting to kill myself after. Those are my top 4.
Simon, go on then.
Oh, that's a tough one. I'm going to go, first one I'm going to go for is Predator.
Ooh.
Oh, yeah. Predator fucking rips, man.
What a movie.
Yeah,
oh
nice.
My God.
That's a really bold top choice, and I respect it a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the music plays a big part because that's probably my favourite film score, and I'm a massive film score nerd. Alan Silvestri just absolutely knocks it out of the park with that
Yeah.
one. Suspense just all the way through, and iconic, muscular 80s dudes just tearing through the jungle. So
Yeah.
Love it.
love that movie. And then let's see, second. I mean, I've got some like fairly basic ones here, but I'm going to go with Die Hard.
Nice.
A Christmas film.
Exactly. I mean, I haven't watched it for last few Christmases. There's been a bit of a sort of tyranny of Home Alone because I've been spending it with people who've just been really wanting to watch Home Alone, which is a good movie.
Die Hard is so much better,
I've seen
though.
it
It
enough,
is so much better.
Yeah.
That era of Bruce Willis, man, I rewatched Fifth Element recently, and I was just like, he's like not a particularly remarkable looking guy, but somehow manages to be like the best looking dude in the world for a period of time. Like he's
got riz.
He's so cool, man. He's so cool. So, yeah, nice.
So that's 2. Number 3, I'm going to go Alien.
Nice, yeah.
Yeah,
Huge.
love me some sci-fi. That is quality. I mean, it depends on the mood you're in. Aliens is also fantastic, but just completely different. So if you want like schlocky, if I was ill, I think I'd be watching Aliens.
I don't think you could
I
have
was-
Predator and Aliens in the same top 4.
Yeah,
That's so much action there, Simon.
yeah.
Too high
So
octane.
we'll go with Alien because it's the classier one.
Yeah.
And then for the 4th one, see, I'd need to put something Star Wars related in there, really. I probably would go for the first Star Wars.
It's a goodie.
Just because of the sort of, if I'm honest, when I rewatched it, I was like, this is probably not the greatest movie of all time. But for me, just the sentimental attachment I have to that movie from having watched it as a kid so much is just like, I love that. And then can I have like an honourable mention, which is a bit of a, it's kind of a problematic one because it's got Kevin Spacey in it.
I love problematic.
It's problematic fave, but American Beauty.
Oh, great movie.
I think it's just an incredible
Such a good movie. Yeah.
And again, one of my all-time favourite soundtracks, just beautiful music, incredible movie, and unfortunately kind of ruined by Kevin Spacey's off-screen behaviour.
Being a pervert.
But, yeah.
And you love plastic bags as well.
Those are very beautiful.
All right, mine, what am I going to go for? So, yeah, I think you're right. Star Wars has kind of got to get in there for me. But yeah, Empire Strikes Back would probably be in there. But then Rocky Horror Picture Show, I'm sure listeners here heard me speak about it before. It's my favorite film ever. It's the fucking best, man. I could just you could wake me up at 3:30 a.m. and just be like, Rocky Horror's on, and I'd be like, I'll watch that. So Rocky Horror's got to be there. One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest is probably in there.
Nice.
That film's, again, a tearjerker. And then I was going to go for Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind.
Oh my God. That's so
great
you.
movie.
I love
so
that
you.
movie. It's
You
so
would.
good. It's just like,
it's a good movie.
bit of weird Kaufman stuff.
Kaufman. Yeah, it's great.
So that's what? No, yeah, that's 4. That is 4. Yeah, honourable mention. I've got honourable mentions were The Royal Tenenbaums. I love that movie.
Honorable mentions.
Alien
Mean
was up there. Reservoir Dogs and La Haine. They're my other top 4. They're my other
good.
5-star movies, I'd say. But yeah, you just got to get a spread in there, don't you? That's the hard thing. I'm kind of I think I do it wrong because I treat Letterboxd top 4 a bit like I would treat Desert Island Discs. I've got to think that I've got what if they're the only 4 movies I could ever watch again?
Yeah.
And maybe that's not a good way to do it.
Probably not, no.
Yeah. A dishonorable mention. What terrible movies did I watch the other day? I watched Van Helsing with Hugh Jackman the other night.
I bet you loved that, though, Jarv. I bet you absolutely loved that.
Vampire films, Jarv?
It's so bad, but yeah, I didn't hate it.
The second Twilight movie, I love to hate watch the Twilight films. I love to get just a little wine drunk and make someone who's never seen the Twilight movies watch them with me because they are absurd. And it's lovely. It's delightful.
Yeah, I've got some probably quite unpopular, my lowest rated movies. Megalopolis is a 1-star for me.
Oh no, Megalopolis is great. Shut the fuck up.
It was so bad, man. Trap,
It was so
I watched
bad,
the other
it's
day.
good.
That was terrible. Trap with
man.
1 star.
Man, I was on the train the other day, and the person sitting next to me, I saw dialed up the new Happy Gilmore on his phone and was watching it, and I was just like, I can't
Get away from me.
I can't do this. But
Yeah.
I really just wanted to just tap him on the shoulder and be like, dude, just switch it off
Just
now,
don't.
because that's the
Turn it
worst.
off right
It
now.
was so bad. It was so bad. Yeah, that needs to go into some of my lowest rated, I guess. Joker is a 2 star for me. That's
Oh
a
yeah,
controversial
no.
pick.
But
And-
The
And I
Dark
didn't like
Knight,
Sinners either, so...
The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises, both up there for me. Great.
Oh
films.
yeah, they're
Yeah.
good. And I don't like any superhero shit.
No, same. But that
But
didn't
they're
feel
good.
like a superhero movie.
Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm partial to a superhero movie. I watched Thunderbolts recently, which I have to say I was surprised by. Is actually pretty great. I mean, Florence Pugh's just incredible.
Oh yeah. I'm
Yeah,
gonna
she
see
did
one
be good.
battle after another this weekend, and I'm very excited.
Nice. Yeah, I really want to see that. Oh, Florence Pugh, that makes me just want to rewatch Midsummer.
Oh
Which
yes.
is like, that.
I love killing boys.
Yeah, exactly. Right. Well, on that note, that brings us to the end of this episode of American Friction. I hope you liked them film recommendations. Tell us your top 4 in the comments, and maybe
We
we'll
still
watch
need to
them.
watch Patton as a
Yeah,
crew.
we do.
Yeah.
We'll do that. A little movie club. But Nikki, thank you very much.
Thank you, Jarv. Thank you, Simon. Chris. God damn it.
Yeah, Chris, man. Oh, I'm on holiday. Yeah, cool, man. Really
Chris,
cool.
if you're listening to this, you're not doing your holiday right.
You're not.
Yeah, Simon, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And Chris, yeah, man, it's cool. It's really cool. Going on holidays, cool. That's great. Fair enough. But like, I'm here and I was sick and I'm still here. You could have dialed in. You got the internet. But don't worry about it. Anyway, listeners, thank you to all of you sincerely for being here. And thanks really, Chris. Don't get mardy about it. But thank you to all of you for listening to American Friction. If you want to keep the podcast going, remember you can back us on Patreon. Go to patreon.com/American Friction to sign up. There is a link in the show notes. We really want to keep going. But we could do with a little bit of help, a little bit of a TLC, a pat on the back, maybe, financially. And a quick reminder, if you can't back us monetarily, we do get that, but please do go rate and review us wherever you're listening to the show, and make sure you subscribe. You've been listening to American Friction. Make sure you keep listening forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. Adios. Ciao.